Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue. I'm very excited about this episode today. Here with me, I have John Lewis, who is a real estate investor out of St. Louis, Missouri. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Sam, thanks a lot, man. I've heard a lot about the podcast, and it's such an honor to be on your show, man. As well as thank you so much for the lives that you do. I learn a lot, so it's an awesome
Thank you.
community.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. So first, I'd just love to hear more about you, what your childhood was like, and what you saw, or perhaps maybe even what you didn't see that shaped your view of what it means to build wealth.
Sure. Yep, John Lewis, born and raised here in St. Louis, Missouri, North St. Louis to be more particular. It's our urban area, populated mostly by African Americans. So yeah, man, I was a product of not just my environment, but a product of my decisions. Um, so I'm proud of where I come from. However, I do have two eyes on my head, so I can see some of the challenges that not just I face, but my community faced. So it does take some leadership and also some decision making. As far as wealth, man, I got a late introduction to it. I'm not gonna lie, and sometimes it frustrates me. But I really didn't read books throughout school. I was very disciplined. I did all my homework, but as far as reading, especially when it comes to wealth and self-study, I didn't do that. I did what I had to do to pass and move on throughout school. But I got introduced to wealth after school, started reading books like all of Robert Kiyosaki's books and Grant Cardone, Damon John, just listening to those powerful minds, and that introduced me. And real estate is one of the avenues that really got me passionate because we're all involved in real estate in somehow or fashion. So that was my introduction.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So it's interesting just to hear. You mentioned that a lot, just like a lot of us, right? We discovered and made these discoveries about wealth and what different people are doing besides the typical working a job and just things people are doing outside. And like you said, a lot of us receive that introduction late. It's not really something our families have been aware of because most of our families are just trying to make it to the next day. So love to hear more about real estate. It sounds like that is something that piqued your interest as you were reading and finding out more information. So I'd just love to hear more about why real estate. Why did that pique your interest?
Um, to be honest, man, it was because in the book, that's what he said, do. Like, if you're looking for some passive income, get your hands on some real estate. So again, I was just following instructions. I wasn't the mastermind behind it. I was just looking for a way. But as I began to study more, I realized that real estate is one of the largest wealth producers, if not, as we advance more into this tech age, some of that may shift because of the power of the internet. But still, real estate is still a heavy hitter in the room right now. And it was something that I can get my hands on. The first property was it was a property in North St. Louis. My aunt, she moved down to Houston. So that property became available. I bought it and it was my first rental. I would work on it a little bit, then go out of town to make money, and then come back home and work on it and go out of town and make money in order to finish the project. So that was the introduction to real estate. I love it. I'm going to always love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned something very, very interesting just now that a relative of yours was moving and the property became available. Can you talk to us like what that looked like for you at the time, and just how that whole process went? Yeah, just how that whole process went, just with acquiring that.
Yeah, man. So the property is on Natural Bridge, man. It's a main thoroughway here in St. Louis, Missouri. It connects STL County all the way to downtown. And the property is also located next to my grandmother's property. So the property, it does hold a sentimental value with us, with the family. It's a nice large house. I really can't see anyone else owning it besides someone in the family. So yeah, she left and the property was vacant for a little bit. Thank God that no one ever went inside of the property or anything like that. But as I began reading the book, the more clear this opportunity started to become to me. Hey, John, this is your chance right here. This is your chance right here. So yeah, for 15 grand, I was able to muster up a little bit from my piggy bank as well as a small personal loan from the bank And I was able to acquire that property. And yeah, when someone started paying me rent on it, I'm like, okay, so this does actually work. I can carve out my space inside of this real estate space, and it started to become more and more clear, and I just stayed after it.
Definitely. And what I like about that story in your start is that a couple things, you identified an opportunity. You didn't simply, there's a lot of things you could have done, right? You could have maybe acquired it and then try to flip it, but which, I mean, happens, but I think something in our community, we tend to be very short-sighted, right? So, we sometimes we see the bag that we can get quickly, but not everyone is at the level of understanding of how valuable it could be to keep a piece of property within the family.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty awesome that was like your first, that was your introduction. I think that's really great.
Yeah, man. Some people's why is the Lambo or it's the big mansion. They're all cool and great whys, but at the time, man, my why was I wanted my wife and my boys. Well, really, it's just my wife at the time, for us to be able to go to Forest Park at 11 o'clock in the morning. So that means like, and I still work. However, real estate does allow me to have some options, and time is one of them. So that's my main objective with it, is the freedom that it offers. And when you're flipping, yeah, that's good. You're building up cash, and you're becoming, you're more liquid, so you can go out and make bigger moves. However, you can't forget that whole passive stream, especially nowadays. We have to secure our future, because the jobs, that's not their priority anymore. Is to secure the future, is to use your labor while you're there. But once you're gone, you're gone. So, we have to see that. We have to recognize that, and we have to start to prepare for our future now.
For sure. For sure. So what were those early days like? Just, placing a tenant and just becoming a landlord for the first time. What was that experience like for you?
It was exciting, actually, man. But this first property, it was sort of non-traditional from my exit strategy, because the property is directly on the bus line. It's right by a bank, right by a grocery store, right by Family Dollar, the library. I actually rented out the rooms for this one. I served men 35 and over, and the property is paid for itself multiple times just because of the cash flow. On the flip side, it is more management intensive. Whenever someone moves out, I have to get that room back into the condition that it would be in order for someone to move in. Um, Also, sometimes the type of tenant that I get in, sometimes you have to manage them a little bit more. But when it's up, it's up. Everything is going well, but there are also downs with it as well, and that's when the whole management comes into play. But yeah, that type of property produce great cash flow. This year will be my last year with doing that type of model. I am going to transition that property into a Section 8 property, just because I want something that's more hands off. But yeah, it's been great for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you mentioned the rent by room strategy, which not a lot of people are really aware of. So can you talk to us more about why you decided to utilize that strategy with that first property?
Yeah, I had some other folks. I've seen some other rooms operated around the city, and I also had some other folks who tell me, because of the location, you're going to stay full. Your phone is going to always be ringing whenever you're out marketing your property. So that's really what led me toward that. Also, when you do a room by room, you're not locked into a 12-month lease. It's not sort of that same those same restrictions that you would have, if you had to put someone who's Section 8 in there, or market rate tenant or whatnot. With me and my guys, if we aren't seeing eye to eye, neither one of us are tied to each other. I'll help
Mhm.
you leave. And if there's a situation where you feel like you have to leave, you're not tied. I just ask that you give me as much notice as possible. So it was actually pretty, I won't say the word easy, but it was smooth to get into. So.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really cool. That's really cool. And how long ago was that first acquisition?
I want to say about 4 years. I think
Nice.
2016. Yeah, I
Nice.
think
Nice.
2016.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. So how did things grow and develop for you, real estate wise, from that point on?
Yeah, man. So I had some failures. I mean, I was trying to do some wholesaling, and
Mm,
wholesaling. I had some failed deals.
mm,
Around this time, it was a failed deal out in the suburb of Missouri. Later, it was another failed deal in the city. Right now, I'm working on another one, which should be closing. Which should be closing at the middle of this month. So that will actually be my first wholesale. Um, but as far as the progression, I bought another property. I think my second property was either a property that my exit strategy was a lease option, or else the property that I actually occupied, my wife and I. It's a duplex. So I'll let you know about both of them. So we live in a duplex here in University City, which is another way, it's another good on ramp to real estate, because you can either have your mortgage supplemented partially, or it's fully supplemented to where maybe you're breaking even, or else maybe you're cash flowing and you're living free. Any one of those will work, because most people have to pay 100% of their own mortgage. So I really would recommend house hacking if anyone doesn't know what it is. Oftentimes it's done with multifamily properties such as a duplex on up to a four family. You can still qualify for that residential financing, and you occupy one of the units and you rent out the other units, and you're able to live rent free. You can also do it with your home, but most likely as you're once you get married, most of the time the wife is not trying to have other
mm.
people in her home.
Yeah,
So the duplex worked out good for us. House hacking I would recommend it because it's a good way to start to see if real estate is something that you really want to do.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you know, we've had a couple guests who've utilized the same strategy. I mean, honestly, even if someone just stopped there, like life is so much better, just having part of that expense or all of it paid off. It just, I would imagine it just, like you said, it frees you up to be able to do so much more. You could use that money for other investments or for personal use. It's just like a weight lifted off. And, a lot of people's biggest expense is the roof over their head. And if you lose a job or your hours get cut, the first thing you're probably thinking about is this rent over my head or this mortgage over my head. How am I going to pay it? Um,
Mhm.
you know, in the absence of a job. So I agree with you. I think it's a great strategy for people to look into.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. I highly recommend it. Check out I think and I don't know if he coined it, but Brandon off of Bigger Pockets. He was the
Yeah.
first one I would always hear talking about it. Yeah, and it motivated me. So, we're in the house hack now. We may do about two or three more before we get like our own straight single family that we occupy. We have enough rental income. It's still we're still hacking our housing situation. So really all the house hack is we hear about life hacks, we hear about computer hacks. With housing, we've hacked our housing situation for our benefit. So as I begin to acquire more, I'm still going to hack what we've built in order to supplement the mortgage that we have to pay for the roof over our head.
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned a lease option. I don't believe we've had a guest who has talked about that strategy. So could you explain to us more like what that means?
Yeah, yeah. So the next acquisition was that it was more of a creative disposition, or disposing of the property, and I did this one with the lease option. Some things that attract me about a lease option is I really don't have to worry about the maintenance and the repairs of the property, because I'm targeting someone that's looking to become a homeowner. So it's a totally different mindset from someone who's just looking to rent and someone who's looking to own. So with the lease option, you have your traditional lease like you would normally have if you're renting from someone in a house or you're renting from someone in an apartment. The caveat to it is that you have an exclusive option. So me as the owner, I have an 18-month term with this tenant buyer. I can't sell the property to anyone else. And during that 18-month term, your tenant buyer may be trying to fix their credit. Maybe they're trying to build up their job history. They're doing whatever they have to do in order to become bankable, and then from there, that's when they actually cash you out of the property. So it's another creative way to dispose of property. Um, I would definitely recommend having a few of those in your portfolio, because if they do cash out, then hey, you make cash flow on the front end, and then they actually cash you out. So you got to make a bigger payday as well, which you can flip that into some more real estate. So yeah, that was like the third or the fourth acquisition there. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Um, let's see, could you give us like an example? You could just use pretend numbers. How, I'm sure there are many different ways to structure it, but I guess for you, what's an example of a way you would structure something like that?
A lease with an option?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So here's one thing. Whenever you're selling your house on terms, your house has automatically become more valuable. You're giving someone the opportunity who the bank have possibly left behind. So this particular property, it was a $7,500 acquisition cost that I paid. I bought it out cash, and I sold it on the lease option for 41.5. Um,
Wow.
so it was $2,500 down payment, and the monthly rent was $850 per month, and it's an 18-month term. So right now we are about at the 12-month mark, and she still doesn't necessarily want to go to a bank. So we have another option, which is I'm going to convert her over to owner financing. So basically I'm going to be the bank for her. And I have another property that I'm doing that with as well. But basically it's going to be a contract for deed. So I don't have to worry about collecting another down payment or anything from her, but I sent her over some options. I think I sent her over her principal, interest, taxes, and insurance that would be due. It's the same as if you're paying a mortgage. That the interest rate is about 8% interest, and the term, I think I sent her over some options where, hey, you can have this house paid off in 8 years, or you can have it paid off in 10 years, and I'm actually the bank for her. However, if she would have went the way that most people want their lease options to go, within this 18-month time, she would have got herself all nice and pretty for the bank to where she would have been able to go out and secure financing, and then she cashed me out. I signed the property over to her, and I'm on to the next deal. So lease options, it's a way that you can get into a property as well, and it's a way that you can dispose of a property. I share the hierarchy with creative acquisition and disposition, and I can share it really quick if you got time.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Go for it.
Cool. So and I learned this from Joe Crump, but of course when we're acquiring, um, we can acquire either subject to, and that's when we actually take over the deed, but we leave the financing in place. So we're taking over that property subject to the existing financing that's in place. So that's number one. And next is owner financing. So let's say that the property is paid off. We can generate a promissory note and a deed of trust. So that homeowner is the bank. So I'm paying them, they're the bank. And lastly is acquisition by way of a lease with an option. So that's the last way, because when you acquire with a lease with an option, the deed is still in the name of the seller. So if I'm acquiring with a lease with an option, I'm not doing any work on the property because I don't want to be working on the property that I don't necessarily own. So on the flip side, when you're disposing of a property, the first way that you would want to dispose of a property is lease with an option, because me as the owner, I maintain more control. That deed is still in my name. However, I'm still bringing in someone who has the mindset of an owner. So our goal is to get them to home ownership. And the next phase is owner financing again. So we can draw up, it could be a contract for deed or agreement for deed, or it's an installment sale, or else we can draw up a deed of trust and a promissory note. Here in Missouri, we're a deed of trust state. Your state may be a mortgage state, but basically your promissory note is your promise to pay, and the terms and your deed of trust and your mortgage, that's the security instrument. If I get out of pocket, they can come and foreclose on me if I'm not adhering to what I've agreed to in the contract. And then lastly is the subject to. I would never dispose of a property subject to. I'm not going to,
Why is that?
because I would never turn over the deed to my property and keep the financing in my name. Most people, when they do that, they are extremely, extremely, extremely motivated. So I'll acquire subject to. I haven't yet, but I will acquire. It's a great way to acquire, but I will never dispose of it that way, not knowing what I know. You know, I'm educated about real estate. So we would have a security instrument, a deed of trust, and a promissory note, or else me knowing what I know, we may just do it on a lease with an option. So it all depends on who I'm sitting across the table from.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
again, that hierarchy is credit to Joe Crump. I studied it, I learned it, and I really like it. When you're acquiring and disposing creatively, So I like to share it when I'm just speaking about creative acquisition and disposition.
Definitely, definitely. So I have a follow-up question. So you mentioned for the lease option, right?
Mhm.
You ideally want someone who's trying to eventually own the home, but perhaps they're in a position where, the bank, just based on their qualifications and such, they couldn't own a home, from the bank or whatever, get a loan from the bank. How do you find that person? How do you find the right person, who could be the ideal fit for something like that?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, most people, if they haven't did what they need to do to be straight with the bank in the first place, chances are you won't get them to do what it is that they need to do. So most lease options actually do not go to the finish line, but you just market the same way that you market for regular tenants. So I found people on Facebook Marketplace. I put my property on Facebook Marketplace, and people just start to hit me up. You can also put signs out as well. Just be aware about throughout the entire country, it's illegal, but people still do it. So you just do that at your own caution if you wanted to use that as marketing. Um, Zillow, you can post your property on Zillow. Word of mouth, you can put a sign out in the front. So you will market the same way that you will market if you had a property for rent. And most people, you hear at lease with option, that's a synonym for rent to own.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you get the rent to own and the lease with the option, when those applicants come in, what they really want is owner financing, but they don't even know. They don't know the difference between the terms. So the lease with an option, your down payment goes toward the purchase price, but that monthly rent does not go toward the purchase price. However, if I'm acquiring, I'm going to negotiate for some of my monthly payments to go toward the purchase price and rent credits, but most people don't know. And the reason is that you want to be careful if you are giving rent credits to your tenant buyer is once you start to mix together this lease and that option, now they're building equity in the property. So
Mm,
if you have to get them out, let's say maybe you can't just evict them now. Maybe you have to pay more money to actually foreclose on them because they have equity in that property. That's why we keep our lease separate and we keep our options separate. This rent is just rent. Get yourself bank. And some people say, why would I ever do that? What's the point? Why would I do this? I'm just paying you, I'm just lining your pockets. I'm lining the landlord's pocket. But let's say, like, imagine if you actually wanted to acquire this property and fix it up. What's the process that most of us have to do? First off, if the property is distressed, you won't be able to get a bank loan on that property. So that's out the window. Next, hard money. Most people it's their first time, they can't even adhere to like a project management schedule to make sure you're on point and you're meeting your deadlines because you don't want to not have the property finished and refinanced out because the hard money lender can take that property. So let's say with this 18-month term, right? And her rent was 850. But let's say she did everything that she needed to do and she was done. She was ready in 3 months and she was able to cash out and get the property, but she only had to put 2,500 down and she only had to pay 850 a week. She got the longer end of the stick than I did because she did what and I mean, I still get it because she cashed me out, but that's the advantage of it. Once you go in there, you got a job to do. Get yourself bankable to where you're able to acquire the property. You're not just, you agreed to rent with an option. So it's up to you if you want to use 3 months of that term, or if you want to use the entire 18 months of the term. So yeah, you can get real creative with it. As I mentioned, if I was acquiring a property with a lease option, I would negotiate for. I would try to get 100% of my payment to go actually toward the purchase price, but not if you get a savvy seller, they'll say maybe 100 or 200 or 300 would go toward the purchase price of the property. But again, just remember when you begin to mix that lease and that option to buy, that a judge can see that as them building equity in the property, and what could have been you just evicting them out of the property if you had to turn into now you need to foreclose on them.
definitely. And I like that for a couple of reasons. So the first thing is you are putting people in position to own property, providing them with like a runway of time to, if they would like to, get things together and be in a position to purchase it, which I think is great. And I think it's a very creative way. Not everybody is in position right away, but if they can already live in it and eventually work towards being in a position to buy it. I think that's great. And then would at the end of that term, let's say they wanted to buy it, would they just receive a loan from the bank? Would it work in that way? If the
Mhm.
person met all the qualifications, you receive you receive your money and boom, it's theirs. It's signed over to them.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
So with this one, like 41.5, I did give her a $5,000 credit though towards some of the repairs. Also, if you're a nice landlord, if you're soft-hearted, put a layer between you and your tenants, and that's me. But yeah, I did give her a $5,000 credit, so that price ended up going down a little bit.
Got
But
it.
yeah, she would go out and secure her financing, and she would cash me out. And now she's paying a mortgage to the bank, and I'm out of the picture. We would have signed over a general warranty deed to her. We closed everything with the title company, and like that, she's a homeowner.
Very cool. Very cool. Are there any other creative strategies you've used? I think those are amazing. What you've mentioned thus far.
The other one is the contract for deed. So I'm in the process of converting her to a contract for deed, but another property, that was the initial strategy. They came with a larger down payment, so we moved forward with owner financing. So yeah, it was $5,000 down. I think I paid like 11,000 something for that house, and maybe put like six into it. I think my total holding cost was like around 10,000. So I was all in like around 20 grand, and sold it for 59,000 on the contract for deed. But in the middle of us working our way to closing, something happened with the roof. So I was like, okay, we got some options here. We can scrap it. You all go about your way, I'll go about my way. I can fix the problem. However, that may raise the price of the property, or else you can fix it and let me know. Maybe we can work out some type of purchase price credit. So that's what they chose. They went and got a bid for the work, and I think it came out to like around 2,300 or something. So I gave them a $3,000 price reduction. So that dropped that price down to 56,000. So it's a $5,000 down payment. PITI is collected monthly at an 8% interest rate, and it's a 15-month term. So that's another thing. You can have you can have the property, but you can also just hold the note. You can have some notes, and then you can have maybe some properties. And you have people who just invest in notes, and when you generate those notes, that's an asset, because you have people that just buy notes, and you have people that just generate notes and flip them, generate them and flip them. But again, if we're talking about building wealth and passive income, you're going to want to get in the habit of holding some things as well. But if you're just trying to become liquid and build up capital, that's another thing that can be sold off. An example is when I moved in here, Enterprise, they originated my note, but about a month later, I get a letter from Wells Fargo, and hey, we're servicing your note now. They sold the note. That's all they do is originate, sell, originate, sell. You can do the same thing. You can be the bank. You can originate, you can sell it, you can originate it, you can hold it.
I love that. I love that. What I really like about what we're learning so far is you are showing us how to be on the other side of the table, right? So to be the bank, to be the one who's receiving what a bank would, who's receiving those. I mean, I think it's just fascinating. And so, is your goal to kind of use all of these different creative options that you're using to get more money than you put in for the property and dispose? Is your goal to use some of that capital to put towards other deals to hold? Like what are some things you're thinking about, I guess, going forward as those things develop over time?
So some of my goals, so my marketing is direct to selling. So I'm encountering people that have a problem. So my goal is to have multiple tools in my tool belt to where I can solve their problem. Not everyone is going to take your lowball cash wholesale offer. They may owe more on the property than what it is that you're offering. But let's say you're able to come in creatively and give them what they want. It's just you need time to pay them off. Another example, I haven't used it, but I've heard. Well, let's say the seller is receiving Medicare, and if you cash her out, you just threw off all of her benefits. So what else do you have that you can do? How can you structure this to where, all right, so let's space this out over 20 years. And this way you're receiving your payments, you're going to get paid in full, and it never disrupts anything that would cause cause you to lose your Medicare benefits. Also, unfortunately, a lot of I'm a millennial. I'm 32. So sometimes we are very mobile. We move around a lot. We may not always want a house, especially if it's distressed and in a neighborhood that we may not want. So if someone is selling the property, or if they don't want to sell it, but they're going to pass it down to the next generation, that next generation may not have that mindset to see the value in that property. However, if we create a note, this note can outlive you. So how would it be if maybe your heir, they're receiving 600 a month, 500 a month, but they don't have to worry about tenants or toilets or anything like that. So you can get real creative. So that's my goal when it comes to encountering sellers. As far as the whole real estate game, I would love to be able to invest in larger multifamily properties. Residential is just, it's what's around me. So that's why I hopped in first. But the goal would be large multifamily, as well as new construction in North St. Louis City, which is where I'm from.
Sure, for sure. And where does the portfolio stand now? Like how many units are you at these days?
I have 5 buildings and 8 doors.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
little small portfolio, but it's growing.
that's good. I mean, I'm very impressed, and I'm glad. I'm really glad we're having this conversation because a lot of I want to inspire our community to be more creative. Right? You've listed. I've already lost track. You've listed multiple ways, creative ways to be in this game, to finance, to help others, and you know, I feel like just with what you've shared, it can open up the minds of other people. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's great that you're doing it in this way, and I'm pumped to put this out because you know you're adding a new twist to it. You're, like I said before, you're showing us how to be on the other side of the table. You know, so I think it's awesome, man.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, man. Like I said, if we focus on like the people and helping people, the the profits are gonna come. And when you notice that this one offer is not being the best solution for everyone, you're gonna learn another way. We are very creative people,
Mm,
so like you know, you'll be able to help so many more people when you begin to learn how to engineer different transactions.
absolutely. Absolutely, man. And can you talk to us more about your marketing and how you find deals? You mentioned that you go direct to seller, which I think is great. I know most people go the traditional route, but I think going about it in that manner um, is probably even better. So I'd just love to hear more about that. How you realize that that's kind of what you wanted to focus on, the way you wanted to source your deals, and you know perhaps you have a couple of tips on how people can do that in their particular market.
Yeah, if you're going to be in real estate and if you want to go direct to seller, take your real estate hat off for a second and put on your marketing hat because you've just become a marketer. So the traditional way that we know is to go to a real estate agent, which is cool. Like we should be collaborating, working with agents. However, they may not always present you what it is that you want. You know, if you're buying a property that's 85 cents on the dollar or 90 cents on the dollar, you know, you really have to be careful in, you know, if the market shifts or whatnot. So I want an even deeper discount. So I will make sure that your agent know your criteria, where you want to be. And then when you go direct to seller, you're actually there in front of them. That's why I still have yet to close a wholesale deal, but I look at them as like Marines of real estate, because they're going in there, they're meeting with their seller. It can be an irate seller, it can be a crazy seller, it can be a racist seller, and they're going in there and they're seeing how can they help, and they're securing the property at a deep discount. They're contracting it, and then they're moving it to someone like myself or like yourself or to a flipper. So I really respect them because they go in and they are one of the main sources of the deal. So as far as me, some other marketing, and I bought the property from a wholesaler. That property that I bought this property from a wholesaler who lives down in Florida, and he's wholesaling deals up here in St. Louis.
Wow.
So that's up to him. But yeah, so I bought from him, and he just marketed his property on Facebook Marketplace. I saw it on there. I'm like, man, this is my area. I know my area. I can make this number work. the repairs weren't too crazy. You know, I like to buy properties that the repairs aren't too off the wall. However, it's still ugly for everyone else, and they see it. They're like, no, I'll pass over that. Another way is just think of every way that we're marketed to. Have you ever picked up the phone when it rang like a half a time, and next thing you know, you have a voicemail? Someone just leveraged a voicemail drop against you. So the lease option property, that's actually what I did. There's different voicemail drop softwares out here, and I sent him a voicemail. I didn't hear from him, so then I picked up the phone and I cold called him, and we talked, set up an appointment, went out there to see the property, and my first offer was actually too low. They didn't accept it. And then I went back and I'm like, hey, I can still make this work. And I came in closer to his number, and that property performs very, very well for me. So that's another way. Pick up the phone, call people. However, we do know that sometimes the phone feels like it has teeth, and we, you know, on the other end, I'm talking to a stranger. Even me, like I still get nervous sometimes talking to people on the phone because you never know. So that's another way. Driving for dollars is big. Get out and drive in your neighborhoods, and when you see properties that are distressed, you can send them a letter. You can write something and leave it on their door. You can call them. You can texting is really big now. Agents. Oh yeah, the street signs. Whenever you see the We Buy Houses, call them and get on their buyers list. So if you're a landlord or a flipper, get on their buyers list so they'll send you whatever they get under contract. And if you're a wholesaler, you know, you'll want to be the one out there putting out signs and making calls and things like that. But you still have buyers and landlords who do it too, because they want the property deep like the wholesaler does as well. But most of the time, they don't have, a lot of work goes into wholesaling. So most of the time, they don't have the time to go out there and do all of the marketing that wholesalers actually do. So those are a few ways.
For sure, for sure. So I know you have a couple little ones. So as they grow up, and what's your plan? Like, do you plan on like having them involved in learning about real estate and different things? Like, I know they're still pretty young, but what have been some of your thoughts lately as it relates to that?
Yeah, man, 100%. So like in our community, we are groomed for the job, right? To work in the workforce. And that's sort of always our plan A. And I have nothing against that, especially like if you work for a dope organization or like a family business or something. However, I want them to like, business ownership could be another priority, and that can sort of be their plan A. And the job can be their plan B. Like it, I just want to flip it a little bit, because like I was a job. My daddy was a job. My granddaddy was a job. My great granddaddy was volunteer volunteer work. Unfortunately, for volunteer work. But yeah, but it was just always working for someone else, and I sort of just want to shift that paradigm a little bit to see if they'll be open to it. So when they're under 18, they're going to have some strong motivation for me. But as they become of age, then the decision will be theirs. But yeah, man, I'm going to take them with me when I'm working on properties, when I'm walking properties, when I'm analyzing properties, when I'm talking to people. Also, when they're out, I want them to say like, "Oh, you should meet my dad. You should meet my mom. You know, oh, my dad buys houses. My dad buys houses just like this." Like, that's things that they can do when they start talking. When they start
Yeah,
talking, they start doing like that. So I've seen the way that other groups of people are very intentional with their children and the goals and the direction that they have for their life. So I definitely want to do that for my boys as well. And I also really want them to leverage the power of the internet. So if I find something that a talent or something that they take well to, we're going to document it. We're going to produce great content to where they'll inspire other peers their age, because that can be very, very rewarding as well. Attention is a whole new currency that we have right now in this age. So those are two things I'm really going to focus in on when it comes to my boys.
for sure, for sure. I know you meant, and how about your wife? How involved is she? What are her thoughts on everything you've had going on over the last couple of years with real estate?
Yeah, man. So she's very supportive, and like she's
Nice.
been here throughout it all. We've been together since we went to high school together, and we started dating freshman year of college. So she's very supportive, and probably the number one support would be just maintaining the household, architecting this household, keeping it together. Sometimes I'm in and out of the house. I'm moving. I get a call from a tenant. Maybe I got to wait. It's 12 o'clock. I got to go. They, then lost a key or something like that, or have some issues. I have to make sure that the property is still functioning. So she's been very, very supportive. As we grow, I would like for us to collaborate more on the management and leadership and taking on different tasks, such as things as simple as lawn care and rent collection, because I self-manage. She can sort of handle that call and make sure that the lawn guy is paid, call and make sure that he's there at the property, things like that. That way I can focus on other parts of the business as well as acquisition and acquiring and getting more. So.
Definitely, for sure. And something you mentioned was like larger multifamilies and new construction in the neighborhood you grew up in. So can you explain to us more? I guess we can start with the new construction part. What piqued your interest in that? And in particular, going back to your old neighborhood and doing it there.
Yeah, man, I love our historic buildings here in St. Louis. However, I've worked in event marketing, so I've been all over this country, except for like that Wyoming, Montana, Idaho part. I still need to go there. But as far as the coast, the South, the East Coast, I've been all over for different events. So I've seen it, and in particular out there in your neck of the woods, but a little further south in San Diego, man. When I travel there, it's very therapeutic when it comes to the homes and the trees and the mountains. And I believe your environment does play on you. So yeah, our decisions are very, very, very important. However, a nice, clean, cohesive environment, it does uplift you. It makes you feel better about yourself. Even when I visit some different affluent areas here in St. Louis. So that's really why I want to see new construction in St. Louis. I want to see some low lighting in North St. Louis, some tree-lined streets, an area where people can walk either at 7 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night, just feel comfortable. When I go to areas and I see women out running and jogging at 11, I'm like, man, it's a cool area. I would feel comfortable with my wife around here. And a lot of those traits are traits that I want to see in North St. Louis, just because North St. Louis is where my home is. So I'm totally fine with rehabbing of the properties as well, but there's some that are just so far gone to where they would have to come down. Yeah. So besides having those empty lots, I would love to see some new modern homes, sort of giving you that Austin, Texas look, green homes, very, very efficient, new construction, new sidewalks, fresh trees and greenery and bushes and parks. That's another thing. Sometimes our parks can be a hindrance in the urban areas. And I'm like, man, this is totally wrong. If we were out 30 minutes in the suburbs, it's a luxury to live next to the park. But not over here, unfortunately, the park could cause certain activity that may not be cohesive when you're trying to raise a family. So that total paradigm shift is some aspirations that I really want to see in North St. Louis City. So that's why I'm passionate about the new construction in the city as well.
Love it. I love it. And could you, so for our listeners who may not be familiar with the St. Louis market, could you tell us more about what's going on, what's happening in the city? And why it's a great place to invest. I mean, you've had really great success there. So maybe we have some listeners who are in different markets, but and want to invest in St. Louis, or perhaps they're considering it.
Yeah, man. Everyone is coming to the Midwest. As far as buying holds, you're gonna get your best best ROI here in the Midwest. Here in the city, just like everywhere else, the downtown areas are being revitalized. You have a lot of affluent dollars actually coming back to the city from the suburbs. So I am too young to have experienced the white flight from the city of St. Louis, but I have experienced the white flight from the county that directly borders the city. So we have the city, then we have our bordering counties, and then we have the far out suburbs, which used to be farmland. So I got to experience moving into a suburb on the outskirts of the city where I had 90% white neighbors. And when I moved out, I had 90%, I had 99% black neighbors.
Wow.
Um, so I got to experience that. And we all know that certain neighborhoods have tipping points. So when a certain amount of a different group moves in, pretty much the pre-existing group are going to move out. In different parts of the country, that tipping point may be different. So with St. Louis, you have North St. Louis City. It's an old part of town. It's primarily occupied by Black African American. Unfortunately, it's where the least amount of resources are, and it's also where the highest amount of violent crime takes place. It's where I'm from. It's where I'm born and raised. You have your downtown area that's being revitalized, and we butt right up against the Mississippi River. And we have it's like $1 billion project that's being built right on the outskirts of downtown right now. So people are starting to buy some of the real estate up, and I'm really eager to see how that's going to play in the city, because downtown has been very sort of landlocked against rough neighborhoods. So our downtown, you can't venture too far away from it. You pretty much have to stay right there in that little pocket, unless you know the areas. North City, and then people, when they get money, they move out to North County. So what happens is we are just running from ourselves. So North County becomes North City until the whole mindset and the paradigm completely shifts. Then you have South City. So South City are your hipsters. You're going to see the Black Lives Matter signs up. You're going to see the rainbow flags up. You're going to see the diners and everything. So that's the hip area. South City is pretty cool. And then once you go past South City, then you have South County, which can be nice. And then certain parts of South County can be like a white version of North City. Right. So because people think that happen in their areas too, but like they have some of the same issues that we have in our communities. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh man, this pretty similar to some of the stuff that go down over on the north side. Yeah. But we both, us on the African Americans, we have our affluent areas and we have our low income areas, and as well as the whites, they have their affluent areas and then they have their low income areas as well. Mm-hmm. And as you come out west, that's the really, really affluent area, West County. That's actually where I went to school. I was bused 45 minutes to an hour away from my home. Wow. To go out to West County. Unfortunately, my mom didn't want me in the school system near where I was, just because of some of the challenges and the lack of resources. Yeah. I still think I would have made it out fair, but this is the path that I was on. It's the path that my mom put me on. So I'm riding with it. That's where I got my education from. And that's the landscape of St. Louis. We butt right up against the river. And on the other side of the river is East St. Louis. So it's a very depressed, impoverished area. However, it used to be a thriving area as well. Mm-hmm. But the East St. Louis riots took place. People began to migrate, move out to North County. And it's still a lot of work to do over there as well. Similar to North City, but like even more depressed when it comes to a very low population and high crime as well. But as far as investing, you can get a good ROI on parking your money. Like you go buy a rental out in North County, like you out in California or New York or something, you would never be able to see that type of return. Like I told you, I buy properties cheap. I paid $11,000, $7,500. This last one I paid $3,750. But even if you want something turnkey, you can pay $40,000 and still command like a $750 rent. So it's hard to see those ROIs in some of the larger cities, the Chicago and the New York and the California, the LAs, those different parts of the country.
Definitely. So I guess so you mentioned like there's a lot of investment happening in and around downtown. I guess from your perspective, like, do you see some of those areas closer to downtown changing a bit? And I guess, more homes being rehabbed and bought and sold and stuff. Like, I guess from your perspective, like, where have you seen most noticeable progression and change?
would have to say, I still see it like in South St. Louis, and
Mhm.
then of course out in the suburbs where the good schools are. That's where people are buying properties to flip. So they're going to
Mm,
buy that property, that they're going to rehab it because the values are strong out there and there's good schools. In the city, we still have high crime. So as far as downtown, I see a lot of the big companies are starting to do work down there. But as far as like the everyday investors, some of them still like their sweet spot areas, like out in the county or
mm,
South City, to where they know it's a safe area. They can get someone moved in. Outside of downtown, it's still sort of in that transitioning period or
right.
whatnot, to where someone like me, I would be comfortable going in there, doing my thing. But you still have other investors that, they're wholesaling. It's a lot of wholesaling, so they'll get it and then they'll flip it to someone else. But yeah, we're still in that transition period for St. Louis.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Cool. And yes, what tips do you have? So let's say, you have someone who's interested in real estate. They heard about this idea of passive income and building wealth. But they're just like, all right, well, what's next? Like, what should I do? To figure out which lane is mine. Like, what advice would you give to somebody in that position?
Oh, yes, and that's a good question, because some of the events that Gabby and I have been a part of, we get a lot of people who are ready to go. They're ready to go, but they don't know where to go. So it's very good to sort of wrap your mind around, like, because real estate, once you start making mistakes in real estate, they can end up being costly mistakes. But however, it's still best to go ahead and get started. So for number one would be education. Um, I'm a student of YouTube University. YouTube University, Bigger Pockets, podcast, Black Real Estate Dialogue.
Thanks, man.
Rap, start to get obsessed with learning about this business. And then from there, you have your local RIAs. So figure out who are the movers and shakers in your area. Beware of those big names that come through your city. I won't drop any of them, but oftentimes it's just a sales pitch, and
Mm,
they'll get you to the back of the room, and they'll even keep your wallet. They'll keep it there with
yeah.
them. So you really have to be careful. I think those are cool. Go leave your wallet in the car, but your real value is going to come from that local RIA with the local landlords, the local flippers, the local movers and shakers in your market, lenders, hard money lenders, bankers, appraisers who are doing it in your market, who know your market. That's where you're going to get your real value, and not just some sales pitch. And then from there, once you begin networking with them, um, I will focus on acquisition. How are you going? Well, first, how are you going to market? Are you going to use agents, or are you going to go direct to seller? Because you got to market in order to get some deals. Next is okay. Now it's time to acquire and fund. How are you going to fund your deals? Are you doing cash? So it's three ways that you can buy property. You can buy property with your cash. You can buy property with your credit, or you can buy property with your knowledge. And I would say definitely you can use all three. With cash, you're limited. With credit can like really, it's leverage. So you can do so much more than what you were able to do on your own efforts or on your own cash. And with knowledge, it's infinite, because remember, you can go in and make a creative offer to a seller where you don't have to come out of your pocket anything, or
Yep.
you can acquire this property and have it sold at closing. It's so many ways. So I would definitely say learn them all, but have a focus on knowledge, because that's really how you're going to propel yourself forward. So funding. Most people are going to need some type of loan. Are you going after properties that are turnkey, or are you going after properties that are distressed? Know that your financing is going to be different. You'll be able to get a bank loan on something turnkey, but if it's distressed, the bank is not going to loan it to you. You either have to have your own money, or some private money lined up, or some hard money. If you're using hard money or private money, your project management has to be on point. You have to adhere to your deadlines. They're gonna disperse your money in draws, and yeah, when you need to either get that property refinanced or sold so that you can pay them off, because you don't want to lose the property to them. So that's funding, and then management. How are you going to manage? Are you going to self-manage, or are you going to hire a property manager? You hire a property manager, you're looking probably around 8 to 12%. The better the neighborhood, the lower the property manager. The rougher the neighborhood is going to be higher because it's more risk. So that's management. If you're holding on to the, that's property management. If you're holding on to the property, project management. If you're flipping the property, you got to stay on your timeline with this project. And then lastly is your disposition or your exit strategy. So you need to know this exit before you even hop into it. What are you going to do? Or else maybe you have a couple different exit strategies lined up. So, okay, I'm going to flip this house, but if it don't work, I can still get a $900 a month rent out of here. I rent it for a year, see how the market does, and then try to relist it. Or it's okay, man, wholesale, I may only make $5,000, but if I can find a way to close on this property, put up some fixtures and paint it and just throw some carpet down, I may be able to hotel this house. I don't have to go in and change out the systems, but people will buy this house, with just minor fix-ups, and they'll take on a few projects themselves. So it's not a wholesale, but it's not a full-out rehab, but it's a hotel. So I'm going to do a little bit to nothing, and then I'm going to throw this property back on the market. So know your different exit strategies. So if you have to write all those down and write your plan down for each of those. But what's going to be really important is linking up with the mover or shaker in your market and learn how they're moving.
Sure,
so that's what I was.
Thank you so much, and shout out to Gabby, Gabby Burks. Can you talk more about the events that have been taking place? I mean, I ask about them all the time, and she talks about them when she comes on the show. But yeah, can you tell us more about it? I just want to keep promoting it because what y'all are doing in St. Louis and bringing the community together and educating people. I love it, man. I think it's awesome.
Yes, Gabby, the real estate bae. I love Gabby. Man, she's just a natural organizer. You should have seen some of the things that she was doing before real estate. But yeah, she's a natural organizer. Whatever she gets in, she's gonna organize and create movements. She's gonna create movements around it. So yeah, so she's organized two St. Louis Black real estate mixers. And Gabby, she was when she got involved, she was trying to figure out where is the Black community within this real estate space here in St. Louis, because we were so scattered and we were never really all together. So she organized these mixers, which were social and educational events. So we would have a panel discussion where we would answer questions of the audience. We would do some breakout sessions and also some deal analysis and property analysis and case studies as well. And our goal really is the entire group of us, the panelists, as well as the people in the audience. We want to move everyone forward. So if you haven't got your first deal yet, we want you to get your first deal. We want you to start taking steps toward getting that property. And yeah, that's what we're doing. We've had two Black real estate mixers, and we're trying to get it to where it's done on the monthly basis. So yeah, it's fresh, it's new, it's a nice change up for St. Louis, because again, like, it's a focus on North City investors who are primarily investing in North City, and again, that's an area that's normally marginalized. So huge shout out to the real estate babe. Thank you, Gabby, so much for organizing that. It's so refreshing to have that, because as I mentioned, it's normally in the margins.
Sure, for sure. Man, this has been a great interview. I've learned a great deal, and you are one creative brother.
Hey, Sam, thank you, man. Like I said, I really want to drive in on that knowledge piece, because when you get knowledge, like, that's where you can really make some moves, man, because things that people don't know. Even something as simple as what we talked about, like the rent credits. If I'm buying a property, I want to negotiate rent credits. If I don't know about rent credits, I'm not going to say anything. But you really have to get your knowledge up, especially a lot of people coming from our community. They maybe don't have a lot of money or don't have a lot of credit. But this internet out here is endless. You can learn things and you can apply that to the marketplace and go out there and just make your move, put your best foot forward.
Definitely. So where can people find you if they want to stay in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing? What will be the best ways to keep up with you?
Yeah, please do. I am super active on Instagram, and that's at I'm John Lou. That's IMJOHNLEW. And if you go to YouTube, just type in John Lewis STL Real Estate, and you'll see my videos pop up. I need to get some more, but I basically document my experience. I'm no guru, I'm no teacher, I'm no anything, but I document my experience. I want to build out my digital space because I know the power of the internet. So the first step for me right now was just documenting my journey. So
Nice.
those are probably the two best places to find me.
Nice, nice. Well, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to putting this out.
Thanks, Sam, man. I love what you're doing over there with Bread, and it's an honor to be on your show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Look forward to hearing from you all soon.